Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Cynthia Alvarez, and I am going to be hosting today's show with Grand Boulevard Coalition. I hope you're all having a good day so far. And I would like to share some quick announcements to start. Before we get into our topic, just as a reminder, my program, Healthy Living, Our Number One Goal, will be posting some good information on social media and sharing some information on World Mental Health Awareness Day on October 10th. So if you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Healthy Living CAP, that's where you'll find all that helpful information as well as some videos. So be on the lookout for that. And today, what we'll be talking about and getting into today is having a discussion around bullying prevention. Since October is Bullying Prevention Awareness Month, we will be getting into some stats, talking about the effects, the results, how to observe, how to see if someone's being bullied, the warning signs, and prevention. So before we get into that, I want to play a video from the CDC that kind of helps to share a little bit about prevention awareness in a video.
Just making sure you're up. 5 more minutes. Becca, let's go. Say cheese.
That was so cheese. Oh my god. Oh my
god. Amanda, stop. She's done nothing to you. Get out of here. Go. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So that was a video from the CDC called Be Someone's Hero, right? So just a little bit of a dramatized video to show how kids kind of experience bullying at school, and having someone at the end there that was there to speak up for this person. So yeah, just kind of emphasizing that importance of speaking up for someone that you see as being harmed by bullying or being bullied in general. Being that person that's able to speak up for others. If you're the person that's just kind of seeing and observing what's happening to other people, kind of standing up for them, just like you would want someone to stand up for you if that was happening to you too. So that kind of will start us off with the topic of prevention and bullying prevention specifically. I wanted to get a little bit into some stats that are related to bullying statistics reported by some surveys that were given to high schoolers in the U.S. So in 2019, about 1 in 5 high school students reported being bullied on school property in the last year. And more than 7% of high school students have been threatened or injured with a weapon or a gun, such as like a gun or a knife or things like that. So 7% does seem like a small number, but when you think about high schools in the US and over certain states, that's kind of a lot of kids that are experiencing things like that. And I feel like some stats and studies that haven't been done yet, but I feel like will be coming out in the later months or possibly in the next year, is bullying since post COVID, because a lot of these studies have been done before COVID. And as I've mentioned and we've talked about on the show before, we feel like because of the isolation that a lot of kids have experienced, there has been that kind of unawareness of kids and how their kind of their lack of communication can affect their relationships with their peers and can cause arguments, fights. Things can get physical just because of that lack of awareness and communication skills that kids are experiencing these days because of how isolated they were over the pandemic, right? From just staring at their screens all day, not getting that interaction with other kids, and being isolated for so long. So I feel like that number may increase in more recent studies, and I hope to report that in the future. But yeah, 7% does seem like a small number, but thinking about how bullying can kind of escalate to gun violence and other forms of physical violence is something to just think more about, because that can put a lot of kids in danger, right? So we'll get into it more a little bit later, but talking about the news and things that have been reported on the news about certain situations of kids that have been bullied and then them coming back later to retaliate against their bullies, and how that can lead to harmful, deadly results too. And almost 50% of youth from the ages of 9 to 12 said that they have experienced bullying at school, and about 14% have experienced it online, right? So kind of getting a little bit into where can bullying happen. Bullying can happen, as we mentioned, in school. That video kind of emphasized also online with that girl that had posted a picture of herself and getting hate comments on her social media posts. Even getting hate messages too through other forms of media like Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and other places where people have interactions with strangers online. And there have been instances of people even creating fake accounts, right, to try to mess with people so that they'll never know who this person is in real life. They kind of hide behind that screen and hide behind a hidden or fake profile, right? So doing things like that to try to get under other people's skins and them facing no consequences because they're hidden behind a screen. And that's something that's become more on the rise as well, especially because during COVID, everyone was isolated, posting things on social media, talking to people through social media mainly too. So that's kind of one of the main things that I feel like a lot of youth have been experiencing lately, and in general too, something that's been on the rise. Another place that people can experience bullying, school, online, and also thinking about older, like adults, right? I feel like we do talk a lot about young people and youth experiencing bullying, which is important, but it's also important to talk about adults who can experience bullying as well, because that is something that can still happen in many places like school, universities, and even workplaces, right? There can be some toxic or hostile environments found in the workplace where someone may feel uncomfortable because of maybe a certain person at their job that makes uncomfortable remarks about them, about other people that they know that work with them in the office. And so that workplace bullying is also a big thing to think about too for adults, because just because people get older, sadly and unfortunately, doesn't mean that people stop bullying, because they might not have, some people might not have matured and feel like that's, we'll also get into that a little bit later too, of why we think people become bullies, right? Why does that happen? But yeah, so thinking about school, online, work, and a lot of different areas, right? One of the studies that I had looked into talked about the different areas specifically in a school, thinking about like high schools, elementary schools, where these kids are experiencing the bullying, because obviously they're not going to do it in front of the teachers and in front of adults if we're talking about youth specifically and kids. They're going to do it in places that are not so public, but they may also do it in public too, like the cafeteria, places like the bathrooms and locker rooms in the high schools, even gym class. I feel like that might be a big one too, just because people are in the locker rooms changing into their gym outfits and just being exposed, feeling like you're being exposed, and people making comments about other students' bodies that may be inappropriate or uncomfortable or just harmful and mean. And other places like the classroom, maybe the teacher might step out for a moment and the students may decide to do something while the teacher's away, and other places like that. So even after school, right, they may follow this person home, they may bother this person. It can get to some extremes, right, where their bully may follow them home. I have heard some stories about some students in third and fourth grade recently about how they have a bully in this girl is in third grade and she has a bully that's in fourth grade, and because he lives close to her, he'll basically bother her until she gets to her house, to her block, and then he'll just go home because he lives close by and he found out where this girl lives. And so these are real things that happen to young kids too, thinking about how young a third grader is 8 years old, fourth grader is like 9 or 10 years old. So bullying can start really early, and so it's important to kind of think about those warning signs, seeing if someone is being bullied and what the signs are. Thinking about your child, right? If you have a child, or even just like thinking about your niece or nephew that are still in school, seeing those warning signs. Some of those things can be feeling isolated, not wanting to go out to school events or social gatherings because, oh, this one person might be there that they don't like, and so that will kind of keep them away from going to social gatherings so that they don't have to interact with this person or see this person because of the fear that they have from being made fun of or just being harassed by this particular bully. And some other things can be just signs of maybe depression, anxiety. They may have experienced something at school and by a bully, and then they go home. And for an example, if someone gets like pushed into a locker, that now this kid has experienced some type of almost a traumatic event, right? So now they're kind of scared to go to school. They may be having nightmares about their bully, and it creates lack of sleep, and that can kind of lead into other mental health issues. Like I mentioned, depression is another thing. Social isolation, not wanting to go outside, as I mentioned too. Eating alone in the cafeteria can also be another thing too, right? Like parents may not be able to see that because the kids are at school. But being a friend, right? Seeing if your friend is being bullied, or even a classmate that you're not friends with or close with, you can still kind of see, oh, this person is sitting on their own and they're avoiding kind of sitting with other people. I have seen it in my high school personally growing up. You kind of see certain people will sit by themselves at lunch because you've seen that they've gotten picked on and they just prefer to avoid the attention and will sit somewhere quietly by themselves. Or people will go to the library instead of going to the cafeteria during lunch because they don't want to deal with their bully. So then that kid is missing out on their lunch because of the fear that they have with just coming into contact. So seeing things like that, being observant of your friends and kids and fellow classmates is very important, just to be aware of and seeing if anyone you know is being bullied. And yeah, so let's also get into what are different types of bullying, right? So there can be different types of bullying. It doesn't have to always be physical, like I said, like the shoving into someone's locker as an example, but there can also be non-physical forms of bullying, and that can happen, interestingly enough, in some of the studies I've seen. If you go to pacer.org, it's a bullying prevention website that shares statistics on bullying, is where I got most of my information. And some of the things I saw on there had talked about how males or young boys will have reported being more bullied in physical forms than girls. And girls have reported more forms of non-physical bullying than boys. And so, it kind of goes into thinking about how young boys can be a little bit more aggressive and kind of seeing how their peers are acting with one another, how they're acting with other kids, physically being a little rough, fighting, and just things like that. And then when it comes to the girls, other non-physical forms of bullying can be things like spreading rumors, even creating that social isolation is a form of bullying, and spreading rumors is one of those things. Just kind of making up fake stories about a certain person that may be harmful, right? And then those rumors kind of spread around to their classmates, to other kids in other cohorts, and now this person just feels completely shut out and isolated from their peers. And that's another form of bullying too. So it's kind of interesting to look at that and see the different ways that different groups of students will bully each other, and how it affects them. So it's very important to pay attention to that too. Just because your kid doesn't come home with any bruises or physical, signs of bullying, there's still that social isolation part, which is important. Which is why it's important to have those conversations with your kids, right? About why or how they're doing. How are they doing in school? If there's anyone that they've been having trouble with at school, just creating that trust and that bond with your child about you can come to me with anything, and that you let them know that you are there to protect them and that you will stand up for them, especially when they're so young, because they will feel alone and they'll feel like, if I tell someone, then I'm just going to get bullied even more. That's things like retaliation, right? That can happen when kids will go to someone about being bullied. And we can talk a little bit more about why do we think kids become bullies, right? What are some things that people have seen? Either you see it in shows or you see it in documentaries from people's real lives about why kids become bullies. A lot of it can be maybe this kid has a lot of stuff going on at home. They may have some insecurities, things that they're insecure about their own bodies or their own personalities that they also see in another person, and then they'll point it out in someone else to kind of try to avoid the attention on them, right? Because they want to avoid the attention on themselves, they will point it out in other people, and then that kind of that's when the bullying really just starts, right? And a lot of it too can also be about survival. So maybe students may feel like the only way to survive socially is to form cliques with certain groups of people. Maybe they see this group of people that is like a group of bullies, let's say, and they don't want to become the victim of bullying, so instead they will join this group of people who bullies others. So that way they're kind of feeling like they're protected by these people, and that can kind of create a harmful environment for these kids. So thinking about things like that, and also a lot of it can come from what they see in their parents, right? Let's say this young kid has a parent that is abusive towards their other parent, and this child sees this in the home. They can kind of take that, and they themselves will become aggressive, the child, and will release that aggression onto other kids, and then they can become bullies in that sense. Seeing how their parents treat other people too, and just kind of seeing that. And so that stuff is really important to think about, to talk about with your kid, the importance of just having that talk with them. Even if your kid isn't being bullied, you also want to make sure that your kid is not the bully themselves, and that you don't end up having to come to parent-teacher conference and find out that your kid is disrupting the learning of other students because they're picking on kids and things like that. So that's something that's very important to think about. And let's see, some other things to know too is that bullying really is a form of youth violence, and it can lead to really bad consequences. So thinking about what are these different types of consequences they can lead to. As I mentioned earlier, that youth violence of using weapons, kids will retaliate using weapons, will want to protect themselves. And there was something in the news that happened, I believe, sometime last week about an 11-year-old who was being bullied during a school event, and his parents were there, but the parents were somewhere else. And what this kid has done is, in order to, I'm assuming, want to protect himself or retaliate against his bullies, he went to his parents' car, grabbed a gun that he knew was in the car, and shot the kids from his school. And I'm unsure if they had passed away or not. But just thinking about that and how dangerous it is, even thinking about the parents to keeping their guns away from the reach of children, locked with the safety on, things like that is super important, because this is something that has happened a lot recently. And just in general, it has been something that they talk about on the news about kids retaliating with guns. Other instances, thinking about youth suicides, right? So that's something that is also hard to kind of talk about, but it's important because a lot of young kids will take their own lives because they feel like they have no escape from the traumatic experiences and the bullying that they're experiencing at school. And sometimes too, the problem is the schools themselves who will protect the bullies over the victims. And I feel like that is also something else that has happened, that happens a lot, because the schools want a safe face and don't want to kind of have this this event spread out and for other parents to know, like, oh, this is going on at my kid's school. So they kind of want to keep it and shove it under the rug. And that ends up affecting the student that's being bullied, and they'll feel like the school's not there to protect them. There was another story about a young girl who was at a private school, and this is a private school too. It's not even just a thing that happens in public schools, but private schools. And there was a girl who was being bullied, who I believe was in middle school, like around middle school age. And she was saying how she was being bullied. The parents took her out of school for that. They reported it to the school, and the school did nothing. So it's really important to make sure you kind of have those talks with your schools about what they do if they have zero tolerance against bullying, making sure these kids are protected, and just kind of having those conversations with them. Teachers, parents, there are a lot of bullying prevention programs that have been known to decrease bullying at schools. So these are things to look into, right, when making sure that your students and that your children will be protected when bullying happens at school. So that is something that's really important to kind of have that discussion. Even like I said, with adults, it happens. So making sure you're checking up on people who might be stressed about work, making sure it's not about bullying in the workplace. And yeah, I hope that you all learned a little something about bullying, how to prevent it, how to spot it between victims and bullies themselves, and how to have those conversations, and just inform people in your lives about it, because it's something that's still prevalent and hasn't really gone away. So we hope that it decreases with more funding and more programs like that. But I thank you all for listening and taking the time to watch my show today. I will be back at the end of the month, and I hope you all have a safe weekend. and take care. Thank you.